Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Damola, and today we are going to be sewing this beautiful short dress that you are seeing on your screen. I've been seeing this dress all over my FYP and I decided to give it a try. So let's get right into the tutorial. So if you look at the dress that we are working on very well, you would notice that it has two darts around the neck area. So we are going to go ahead and draw the darts first. So the first thing I did was I went ahead to draw my starting line, and on my starting line I'm going to go in by 2 inches just like you see me do. Then I'm going to go down by 5 inches, right? Then on that 5-inch point I'm going to go in by 2.5 inches. Then I'm going to connect that 2.5 to that 2-inch on my starting line. Then I'm going to go ahead and take 1/2 inch on both sides of that line. Then I'm going to connect it to the dart leg. That is going to form our dart for the front. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to input my neckline for this dress. I was going to use 2.5 inches, but I later changed my mind and I ended up using 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and input the 3 inches. Then I'm going to return the 1-inch dart intake. That makes 4 inches, right? Then on that 4-inch mark I'm going to go down by 1/2 inch and I'm going to draw a straight line, which is going to serve as our new shoulder line. Because if you look at the dress very well, it looks like a cut together turtleneck, but it is not that high. Then after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to go in by 1 inch on that new shoulder line, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and input my shoulder measurement plus 1 inch to replace the dart intake on the neckline. So my shoulder measurement is 8 inches. I'm going to go ahead and add 1 inch to it. So I'm going to input 9 inch as my shoulder measurement. And from that point, I'm going to go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. And I'm going to connect it to the 1 inch I measured after my neckline, like so. Then I'm going to curve it back to my starting line, just like this. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to take all my vertical measurements. So I'm going to place my tape on my shoulder slope and I'm going to be taking my armhole measurement of 8 inches, my bust point measurement of 10 inches, my under bust of 13.5, my half length of 16 inches, and my hip depth of 25 inches. Then I'm going to take the full length of the dress. I used 36 inch as the full length of this dress and I added 1.5 inch hem allowance, but later on I discovered that it's a bit too long for me, so I minused about 3 inch from it. So my length for this dress is 33 inches plus 1.5 inches seam allowance. So now I'm just going to go ahead to draw a straight line and I'm going to label each of the vertical lines. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to draw my armhole line. So I'm going to measure whatever I have on my shoulder. I have 9 on my shoulder, so I'm going to go ahead and input the same thing on my chest line, and I'm going to draw a straight line from my shoulder slope down to my chest line. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to create my princess line. I'm going to go ahead and input my nipple to nipple measurement plus 1 divided by 2 on my chest line, my bust point, my under bust, my waist, and my hip depth, and I'm going to connect that with a straight line. And after doing that, the next thing is to take in my dart. So I'm going to take 1/2 inch on both sides of my nipple to nipple measurement on my waist and on my under bust, and I'm going to connect them with a straight line just like this. And after doing that, I'm going to go to my bust point, and on the nipple to nipple measurement of my bust point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, right? Then I'm going to use my ruler to connect from the dart to that 1 inch, just like this. And after doing that, I'm going to go up on my bust point by 1 inch again. Then I'm going to find the midpoint of my armhole and I'm going to connect. The reason I'm going up by 1 inch and going down by 1 inch is to eliminate any pointiness on that part. So just go ahead and connect it like that. Then on that same armhole midpoint, we are going to take 1/2 inch that on both sides, and we are going to connect it back to that 1 inch. Then you can now go ahead and blend that part so you don't have any pointiness. Just watch what I'm doing now. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to extend that line, that is the lower line, by 1 inch, because automatically after making our curve the line becomes shorter. So I'm going to extend it by 1 inch, just like we would in our normal princess dart. Then to complete our diamond dart on the lower part, I just came down by 5.5 inch. Then I'm going to connect it to the 1/2 inch dart on my waist, like so. I didn't use any measurement for this. I just measured, I made sure it is about 3.5 inch above my hip depth. That was what I did. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to create my armhole curve. So I'm going to go ahead and input my bust measurement. Then I'm going to add the 1 inch that we had to extend the princess line dart. I'm going to add it to that measurement, and I'm going to add my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. Then I'm going to go ahead and create my armhole curve like this. So now we are almost done with the dress. The next thing I'm going to do now is to input all my other vertical measurements. I'm going to come to my under bust and input my under bust measurement. Then I'm going to return 1 inch for the dart intake, and I'll also add my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. And on my waist, I'm going to input my waist measurement divided by 4, and I'm going to return the 1 inch dart intake. Then I'll add my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. But because my under bust and my waist is the same thing, I just measured what I have on my under bust and I input the same thing on my waist. And on my hip, I'm going to input my hip measurement plus 10 divided by 4, which is 12.5. And I'm going to add my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. So I'm going to measure whatever I have on my hip, and I'm going to input the same thing on the dress length. Then I'm going to go ahead and connect all this points like this. Okay, so the last thing to do is to draw my neckline. So I just came down by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to curve it towards my shoulder slope. So now I'm basically done with the front part of this dress, and this is just me shading off the parts that I'm going to be cutting out. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. Just pay close attention to the parts that I'm cutting out. So this is what the front pattern looks like after cutting it out. I'm very sorry it went out of camera, but you're going to see a clearer view when we are cutting the back pattern. So now for my back pattern, the first thing I did was to draw my starting line like this. Then I went ahead to introduce my front pattern. As you can see, this is what the full front pattern looks like. And I made sure that the shoulder line, that is the tip of the shoulder line for the front, is touching the starting line like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and mark all my vertical lines all over again like this. And after doing that, I'm going to set the front pattern aside, and I'm going to connect these lines with a straight line, just like you see me doing. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to contour the back of this dress so I don't have any zip bulge, because I'm going to be using an invisible zipper. So I'm going to come to my starting line, and I'm going to measure 1 inch, and I'm going to take that 1 inch all the way to my waistline, and I'm going to connect it with my straight ruler. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to connect from that point down to my hip depth like this, right? Then after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take in my zipper allowance of 1 inch. So just take your 1 inch after that 1 inch that you took before, then you're going to connect like this. I hope you understand. It is still the same zipper allowance. The only difference is that the waist part has a curve to it. So now you can go ahead and shade off that part that you don't need and label your zipper allowance. Then you can go ahead and label all your vertical lines also, just like this. And after doing that, the next thing I did was to introduce my front pattern again, and I placed it after my zipper allowance, just like this. Now if you remember that my neckline for the front pattern was 3 inches and I added 1 inch for the dart intake. So now for my back, now I'm going to measure my neckline without the 1 inch for the dart intake. So since I had 4 inches on the front, I'm going to impute 3 inches on the back. So I'm going to go ahead and impute that 3 inches, and I'm going to be leaving my back neckline straight. I'm not going to curve out the neckline. I'm going to leave the back neckline straight. So I'm just going to go ahead and impute the 3 inches just like this. And after doing that, I'm going to place the tip of my shoulder slope on that 3 inches, and I'm going to curve my shoulder line, just following the same shape, just like this. And after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and set my front pattern aside. Then I'm going to measure whatever I have on my shoulder line. I'm going to impute the same thing on my chest line, and I'm going to draw my armhole line. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to create my dart. So I'm going to go ahead and impute my nipple to nipple measurement plus 1 divided by 2 on my waist, and from there I'm going to go up by about 4 inch. I'm going to make a mark there. Then I'll also go down towards my hip by 4 inch. Then I'll connect with a straight line. Then I'm going to come to my waist, and I'm going to take ½ inch on both sides of my nipple to nipple measurements like this, and I'm going to connect the lines. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do now is to draw my armhole curve. So I'm going to come to my chest line, and I'm going to impute my bust measurement. Then I'm going to add 1.5 inch seam allowance to it. Then I'm going to go to my armhole line, and I'm going to find the midpoint. And from that midpoint, I'm going to go down by 1 inch, and I'm going to connect it to my bust measurement, just like that. Then I can go and impute all other vertical measurements. I'm going to come to my underbust, and I'll impute my underbust measurement. Then I will return the dart intake on that part. Then I'm going to add 1.5 inch seam allowance. I'm also going to come to my waist. I'm going to impute my waist measurement, return the dart intake, and I'm going to add 1.5 inch seam allowance. Then I'll come to my hip, and I'm going to impute my hip measurement plus 10 divided by 4. Then I'm going to add my 1.5 inch seam allowance. Then whatever I have on my hip, I'm going to impute the same thing on my hemline. Then I'm going to connect all the lines. And after doing that, we are basically done with the back. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. So please pay close attention to the parts that I'll be cutting out. And after cutting it out, this is what it looks like. So now we can proceed to cut it on our fabric. So these are all the materials I'm going to be needing for this dress. I'm using a thick crepe fabric it is very, very thick and it is non-stretchy. And I'm also going to be using a lining. This is the normal lining that we use for our Ankara and co. I couldn't get the cotton lining in black, that was why I settled for the normal lining. Then I'm also going to be using a light interfacing, they call it BFF in the market here. I'm going to be ironing this on the lining parts that I'll be using for my pocket. Then this is my stay. I'm going to be ironing this on my actual fabric just to give it some stability, because I'm not going to be using any boning or structure for this dress. So I've gone ahead to place my front pattern on my fabric and I pinned it down. Now I'm going to take 1/2 inch allowance all round from the top to the shoulder slope to my princess dart area. I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch sewing allowance all the way. So you can see how I'm trying to maneuver my way to get 1/2 inch sewing allowance on that area. So just to do this anyway, just make sure you have 1/2 inch sewing allowance on that part. And after doing that, you can go ahead and cut it out. So pay close attention to how I'm going to be cutting it out. After cutting it out, this is what it looks like. So now we are going to go ahead and cut the back pattern also. So I've pinned the back on the fabric and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out, leaving 1/2 inch sewing allowance on the neckline area, on the shoulder slope and also the armhole area. So after cutting it out, this is what it looks like. I went ahead to remove the pins so you guys can see what it looks like. So this is what it looks like. I have 2 pieces of the back pattern. So now I'm going to use that to cut the lining, and I'm going to cut the lining for the front part as well. So this is the front pattern with the lining. You can see what it looks like. So now I'm going to go ahead and iron the stay on the actual fabric itself. I'm going to do the same thing for the back. Then on my lining, I'm going to cut about 1 inch away on the lower part, so that when I turn the dress, I'm going to have a neat finishing at the base of the dress. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 1 inch away on the hem for the lining, and I'm going to do the same thing for the front lining as well. So we are going to be working on the front first. I've gone ahead to iron my stay on the actual fabric, and this is what it looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take in my princess line dart with 1/2 inch, and I'm going to do the same thing on my lining also. And after I was done with that, this is what it looks like. I went ahead to notch it and I pressed it open, so you can see how flat it is laying on the right side. And I also went ahead to do the same thing to the lining as well. So now what I'm going to do now is to take in my dart. So I'm going to introduce my pattern paper once again, and I'm going to place it on the actual fabric itself. So I'm going to place it in a way that leaves out the 1/2 inch sewing allowance around the neck area and the shoulder line that I left when I was cutting. I'm going to place it just like this, and I'm going to take my tracing wheel and trace out the neckline dart. But if you don't have a tracing wheel, it is totally fine. You can use your pencil, your marker. Just find a way to transfer the dart on the pattern paper to the actual fabric. So I'm going to do the same thing for both darts on the neckline, and I'll do the same thing for the lining as well. So just watch what I'm doing. So after I was done with that, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the back piece as well. And then I've gone ahead to sew up the dart. You can see the dart for the neckline area, how it is looking like, and I also went ahead to iron it down. I did the same thing for the back dart as well. I took in the dart and I ironed it down. So now I'm going to go ahead and create my flap pocket. I'm going to be creating the pocket exactly after where my princess line dart stops. Right, so I have all the fabric I'll be using for this flap pocket. They are all measuring 7 inches wide because my flap pocket is 6 inches and I added 1 inch sewing allowance. I'm going to be doing this off camera and I'm going to be making a video on it later because I don't want this video to be too long. So after I was done fixing my flap pockets, this is what it looks like. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and place my lining on my actual fabric and I'm going to turn it with 1/2 inch all round, leaving only the armhole part and the shoulder parts open. And after I was done with that, I'm going to go ahead and place it on each other like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and take in 1/2 inch zipper allowance on the back, because if you remember, our zipper allowance for our back was 1 inch and we used 1/2 inch to turn it out, so we have 1/2 inch left. I used 1/2 inch because I don't want too much allowance inside this dress so that it is going to lay flat. So I'm going to go ahead and take in my zipper allowance, and I'm also going to turn my shoulder. So please watch how I'm going to turn the shoulder very carefully. I'm going to go ahead and place both shoulder on each other like so, and I'm going to use one lining to turn it over to the other side, just like this. Just look at what I'm doing. This is just so that at the end of the day I won't have any stitch showing inside my dress. I hope you guys understand. And after I was done with all that, this is what the dress looks like. So the last thing that we need to do now is to just fix our sleeve. The dress has a cap sleeve, but the cap sleeve is looking too small for me. It is giving more of armless and I don't really like armless, so I'm just going to be using a normal short sleeve for this dress. If you don't know how to do that, let me know in the comment section, because I would not be showing the steps here because I don't want this video to be too long. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the sleeve now, and I'm going to come back to show you guys what it looks like. So this is what the dress looks like at the end of the day. I really love the outcome. The only thing I would have done differently was to make it a bit longer, because now it is looking very short. Now if you like this video, please do well to give this video a thumbs up, like and share, and also don't forget to turn on the post notification so you get notified whenever I post a new video. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.